So the last one's length is pretty good, but I'm going to practice this one more time and see if it feels like it's hanging together. This feels like a more challenging Devar Torah, which doesn't have a clear, here's what you're supposed to do. I want you to go out in the world and do this. But because, I don't know, again, because I'm obsessed with feelings and emotions and how I feel about things, I think these things are, does it fix anything to deal with your feelings? I think it does. So I think this helps you deal with your feelings. What's this deal? How am I supposed to feel about God? And then if you clear in a moment, if you have more clarity about how you feel about God and how you feel about these things demanded of you by God and how you're supposed to be afraid of God and love God, then maybe that creates more energy. You get more flow. It's like taking some boundaries out of your river. So your river of things you can do is easier to get through, but it takes some of the barriers out. Or maybe it doesn't, and it's just bullcrap. Shabbat Shalom. So we Jews are told in multiple places in the Torah, the entire Tanakh, all of Talmud, all the commentaries and mystical tomes and countless divrei Torah, poems and liturgy, that we are supposed to love God, but also fear God. So how does that work? We are supposed to love God, as in the part that comes right after the Shema in our prayers every evening and morning. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol me'odecha. You shall love God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. And we're supposed to fear God. As in this week's parashat, Moses' father-in-law tells Moses to find the most capable people to help the cause, people who fear God, Yir'eh Elohim. Later on in the portion, Moses delivers slightly confusing instructions about fear when the Hebrews are confronted with God's immense power at the giving of the Ten Commandments. The thunder and the lightning, the blare of the shofar and the mountains smoking, God being near. Moses says, Al tira'u, don't be afraid, for God has come only in order to test you, and in order that the fear of God may be ever with you, so that you do not go astray. Don't be scared of God. Be scared of God so you do right. Be scared of what could happen, but don't be afraid. What? We are told that God is so great, we need to be in awe of God, to fear the power, the size, the infinite beingness of God. And yet also, I must love God. I must not be afraid. I must hold God close. I must feel intense affection for God. I must be full of joy and gratitude for and with God. To modern sensibilities, you're forgiven if it sounds like an unhealthy relationship. If God were just another person, it would be weird to say to a friend, oh, I love God, but I'm really scared of him too. Or I'm scared of God, but I really, really love them. So now if you feel a bit trapped now, like you've got your religious heart in a finger trap, love, 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 fear, fear, fear. And the more we pull on the sides and try to love God and fear God, the tighter it gets. Well, let's get unstuck. To help, we're going to turn to Rabbi Eliezer ben Judah of Worms from the 12th and 13th century. In a book from the 17th century, he is said to have written, Sefer Raziel. It's kind of a mystical text for people who are going to try to lead a more pious life. Rabbi Eliezer of Worms describes the fear of God this way, and I'm going to gender neutral his words for our audience here. The root of the fear of the Lord is when a person desires something and yet gives up the pleasure because they fear the Lord. It is not that they fear punishment in this world or the next, but are afraid that they may not be perfect before God whom they love, when a good deed presents itself to them and they find it very difficult to perform it. It's not that you are to be afraid of the punishment for not following God's commandments, not doing the right thing. It's that you're afraid to disappoint God, to be unworthy of the love of God, to be unworthy of your best self. So you love a person so much, you fear blowing it. Even we moderns know this feeling. A parent or another relative or a friend or a boss we love or a mentor, we love them and they inspire us to do better. And we are afraid to do the wrong thing and harm that loving relationship we have with them. You know the right thing to do, and it's hard and it's easier not to do it, but you do it because you're afraid, and you're not afraid of punishment, but you're afraid of not being your best self. You're afraid of not rising to the challenge set by a person or the tradition or a code that you deeply respect. So Moses tells us that God's wisdom is that it's understandable to be afraid of the thunder and the lightning, the smoke and the fire, but you are wrong. Instead, be afraid of failing in your relationship to follow God's wise rules and be a better person. Be afraid of failing that relationship with God, who says over and over that God wants us and the rest of the Jewish people to do better, to be a kingdom of priests and a light to the nations. And that is one way our tradition resolves the problem of how you love so much that you're afraid. And you're so fearful and afraid because you love, and that it's not so weird or unhealthy sounding to be a God-fearing person and a God-loving person. Shabbat Shalom.